Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. We will be reciting the fourth paudi or step in the Var in Rag Maj, Mahalla Pehla. Salok Mahalla Pehla, Suine ke Parbat Gufa Kari, Keh Pani Payal, Keh Vich Tarti, Keh Akasi, Urd Raha Sir Paar, Pur Kar Kaya Kappad Pehra, Tova Sadakar, Bhagratta Piyala Kala, Beda Kari Pukar, Hoye Kuchil Raha Mal Tari, Durmati Mat Vikar, Na hau na मैं ना हूँ होवां नानक शब्द विचार महला पहला वस्त्र पखाले काया आपे संयम होवै अंतर मैल लगी नहीं जाने बाहरों मल मल धोवै अंधा भूले पाया जम जाले वस्त पराई अपनी कर जानै हउमै विच दुख घालै नानक गुरमुख हउमै टूटै तां हर हर नाम ध्यावै नाम जपे नामो आराधे नामै सुख समावै पौड़ी काया हंस संजोग मेल मिलाया तिन ही किया विजोग जिन उपाया मूर्ख भोगे भोग दुख सबाया सुखों उठै रोग पाप कमाया हरखों सोग विजोग उपाय खपाया मूर्ख गणत गणाए झगड़ा पाया सतगुर हथ निबेड़ झगड़ चुकाया करता करे सो होग na chale chalaya. So in the opening verse here, Suine ke Parbat Gufa Kari, Keh Pani Payal, Guruji is now critiquing the existing practices that he saw around him. And Suine ke Parbat Gufa Kari, Suine ke Parbat refers to the mountain of gold. And this is a signifier for Mount Sumer. This is a mythological mountain believed to be made of gold. And so the Guru is saying, even if I were to sit in a cave in this mythological golden mountain, or if I were to immerse myself underwater, ke pani payal, or even if I were to stand on my head, urd raha sir paar, whether on land or in the sky, keh vich tarti keh akasi. And even if I were to robe myself from head to foot, pur kar kaya kappad pehra, pur, completely robed, kaya kappad, and then if I spent all my time washing those clothes, tova sadakar, that washing becomes my constant activity. Here a reference to the desire to stay clean, to keep the body clean. And then he goes on to say, Bagga, Ratta, Piyala, Kala. He lists out 4 colors. Bagga, white, Ratta, reddish, Piyala, yellow, Kala, black. Now, these are various traditions, references to the various books that were read, the Vedas, and signified or stood for a particular viewpoint and worshipped a particular incarnation. Piyala, for example, stood for or symbolized Krishna. Rata symbolized Rama, and Kala for Shiva, and so on. So these were established cultural modes. And so the Guru is saying, even if I wore different colored robes, now here, this can also mean if I wore a different ideology, whether it was white, red, yellow, or black, and that if I belonged to the various traditions and recited the Vedas, a-sabad-a-day kari pukar, or, and then now he's speaking on another practice of various sects, or hoye kuchil raha malatari, if I choose to remain dirty. Hoye kuchil, kuchil means dirty, and it was the practice not to clean one's teeth. Hoye kuchil raha malatari, mal, dirt, tari, rubbing mud on my body, a very common practice amongst ascetics in India. So the Guru says, he lists out all of these things and says, even if I were to do all of this, choose to remain dirty or smear myself with mud, what are these things? These are nothing more than what he says, durmat mat vikar. Durmat, faulty thinking, erroneous thinking. And not only that, but this faulty thinking creates a sense of display, mat vikar. So it colors the mind to express itself in a faulty way. And then his response, which seems apparently to a question as to where he stands or which ideology has he adopted, he responds, seemingly, na hao, neither in the past, na main, nor in the present, na hao homa, nor in the future, do I belong to any of these orders. In other words, Guruji is saying, I'm not subscribing to any ideology. And what is Nanak doing? Nanak sabad vichar. Nanak is engaged in contemplation of the sabad. And the sabad is the testimony of the Guru, the enlightener. So you see the switch. The Guru is engaged in the testimony of the enlightener, which essentially is saying he's committed to self-knowledge. So this is more psychological than it is physical. That's the first distinction to understand. Guru Nanak has no use for any kind of physical display or physical rituals. For him, the core of the problem is within, its psychological nature first. And we've got to resolve that, as we will see in the following sections of this pori. And then he says, Vastra pakhal pakhale kaya ape sanjam hove. This business about washing and cleansing the body is just a matter of personal discipline. But what he's saying is, this has become a fixation, and the individual is persisting in scrubbing his clothes and body, and while he does that, and it is indeed a fixation, in fact we recognize people who wash their hands, for instance, constantly, as being on the borderline of being paranoid, perhaps. So the Guru is saying this business about constantly trying to keep your body clean, trying to keep your clothes clean, strikes him as being actually a psychological hang-up. Because you're doing this and remain ignorant, nahi jane, of the psychological impurities within. Antar mail laggi. Antar mail laggi nahi jane. ਬਾਹਰ ਮਲ ਧੋਵੇ, ਬਾਹਰ ਧੋਈ ਜਾਂਦਾ. And then what does that do? It blinds you. Anda pule, paya jam jalle. And here the cycle begins. The individual is misled, blinded, and then falls into the trap of time, which is the play of this world. It is the trap of time which causes or gives us a sense of false ownership. Vastaparai apani kar jane. What is this ownership? What is this primordial sense? It is ownership of the body, identification with the body, which gives rise to an epiphenomenon called haume. And it is in this haume that much suffering is endured. Haume which dukh kal. So vastaparai apani kar jane. This is, in the Indian knowledge systems, identification with the body is the primeval error. This is the distortion. But it has practical implications also. It can be thought of as misappropriation. Vastuparai apani jane. Wresting from others, whether through force or through theft, what really doesn't belong to oneself. Guruji advises us, Nanak, Gurumukh haume tute, ta har har naam te aave. Through the process of Gurmukh, Naam jape, namo aradha, name sukh samave. Here's the key. Only through Naam is release from suffering possible. Therefore, says Nanak, understand Naam, Naam jape, and through its understanding will come an adoration of Naam, a feeling of awe. Namo aradha. Namme sukh samave, and through that feeling of awe, the individual will harmonize with the self. Namme sukho samave. So it is the Guru Enlightener who helps in shattering the illusion of a separate self, of haume. And then the mind comes to rest in self-knowledge. And in the Pauri, the essence of Guru Nanak's message, what he is saying is, Kaya hans sanjog mel milaya, tinhi kiya vinjog jini upaya. Understand that the union of the swan, Hans, which signifies the self within tantric traditions, a term that Guruji has used, he's saying, understand that union of the self with the body was brought about by the same ordinance, the same hukam, which also causes their separation. So in other words, the coming together and the separation, birth and death, comes through hukam. Understand this. But the murakh, the foolish, the ignorant, experiences and gets caught in the pleasure or enjoyment of the senses. Murakh pog, poge pog. So the Guru is trying to remind us that we live in the world of opposites. So the seed of pain or sorrow, dukkha sabaya, is in the very act of pleasure. One has to realize that from pleasure arises pain. Sukh utthe rog. And then what happens is the desire for more pleasure pushes the individual into wicked activity, papa kamaya. And the result is that the individual goes astray, khapaya. Papa kamaya and then khapaya. He repeats himself. The individual goes astray, caught in the cycle of pleasure and pain. Har kasog vijog upay. So that's the cycle in time that we get trapped into. And this is what conflicts the ignorant and the foolish. They are conflicted Murkh ganat ganai chagda paya. Chagda. They're conflicted. Why? Because they want to be counted. Ganat ganai. That is, they see themselves as distinct and separate. That is the conflict. So they're conflicted within. They do not realize that whatever is ordained by the Creator happens. Karta kare so hog. And creation cannot be dictated to. It cannot be pushed around. Na chale chalaye. Karta kare so hog. It'll happen. Na chale chalaye. You can't push it around. So the essence of this pauri is that we need the Sadguru to realize, not simply know intellectually, that the sense of self is an illusion and that we need to get past the illusion to be able to live a life that is in harmony with Hukam. And that involves Naam, knowledge at all levels. So become knowledgeable, find the Satgur, engage with the Satgur. The Satgur is within as it is without, and live a joyous life. On that note, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.